Breaking tonight, two big political stories. First, Congressman Paul Ryan jumping into the race to be the top man that is in Congress. Britt Hume on that in a moment. Second, a series of new polls starting to suggest that businessman Donald Trump is running away with the Republican race and is touching off talk of a Republican war to stop the current frontrunner. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. The Kelly File has tracked nomination polls for 4 months, and only one discernible trend has emerged. Celebrity, reality star, outsider, a man who has never held political office, is the frontrunner. Since mid-July, Trump has been first in 33 out of 34 national polls, and the latest surveys continue to bear that out. First up, CNN with a new poll out today. Trump in first with a 5-point lead, up 3 points over CNN's last poll. Monmouth also released today. Trump trouncing the closest competitor, Dr. Ben Carson, with a 10-point gap. Plus, NBC News Wall Street Journal has another new poll out. Trump at 25%, the highest he's ever scored in that poll. Those who said it could never happen are starting to bite their tongues.
I do think he can win the nomination. I wouldn't have said that 6 weeks ago, but I think he can.
Sounds like a lot of people I talked to.
I think he's an incredibly skilled politician.
I know all of us dismissed Trump early on. All of it, the so-called experts, his summer fling, momentary amusement. I am beginning to believe he could be elected president of the United States.
The Republican establishment, for the first time, saying off the record, this guy could win. I mean, the top people. I've heard that from everybody. I don't hear anybody saying he can't win the nomination anymore.
And talk like that has touched off headlines like these, as Byron York writes about, quote, a panicked Republican establishment getting ready for war against Trump. Joining me now, Fox News senior political analyst Britt Hume. Britt, great to see you. Before we get into Trump, let's just start with the news that's broken in the House tonight on Paul Ryan, who's now saying he will run for Speaker, assuming he has the votes. What does it mean, and what does it tell us?
Well, he didn't quite say that, Megyn. What he said was that he would run for Speaker and would take the job if certain conditions were met, if he could be what he called a unifying figure. Now, unifying figures in the Republican caucus these days are not exactly thick on the ground. They're not exactly coming in the windows. So he was laying down conditions under which he would accept the job. And I think a lot of people in the so-called Freedom Caucus, who are the people that, by uniting and blocking the way, kept Kevin McCarthy from becoming Speaker, expected, I think, that the Speaker candidates would want to come to them and see what they wanted. But Ryan was laying down a list of conditions and said if he could be a unifying figure. So he's not just talking about getting the votes. In fact, he said he didn't want to just be a guy who barely squeaked through with 218 votes. He wants an overwhelming mandate from those people. And basically what he wants is, if he's Speaker, he wants those people off his back. And I'm not sure he's going to be able to get that from those people. They're pretty recalcitrant, and a lot of them are responsive to constituents, and I hear from them all the time, who think he's a rhino. And so that being the case, it may well not come to pass.
John Boehner better get comfortable in that spot, which he's agreed to hold for the time being.
I think Boehner's really eager for the Ryan thing to happen because he doesn't want to stick around any longer than he absolutely has to.
Take the baton.
Yeah, right. He wants out.
All right. So, but a man who does not want out is Donald Trump. And what do you make of the Byron York piece today, suggesting that the Republican, quote, establishment is preparing for war against Trump, saying if we have to take him down, we will. The negative ads will start. We'll go after him in Iowa. We'll go after him in New Hampshire. We're not letting this man get the GOP nomination.
Well, I think the world of Byron, and I suspect that headline that you're showing on the screen right now is not something he would have written. Somebody else wrote that headline. They're not quite at any kind of panic stage yet, but I think it's become clear, because it's getting late, Megyn, that his lead has persisted it so long, as you just described. You're looking at the kind of percentage of the vote that in a place like Iowa, or even perhaps even New Hampshire, could be the winning percentage. So you posit Donald Trump having won Iowa and New Hampshire or New Hampshire, and going into South Carolina, where he has a lot of support, you're looking at somebody who's got a tremendous head of steam and might become impossible to stop with a disaffected Republican electorate. So his nomination now becomes something that everybody has to say is possible. I wouldn't go as far as Chris and say that I can quite picture him elected president, because I think, remember, a lot of Democratic voters have a say in that, and his negatives are pretty high with Republicans. One can only imagine what they are like with most Democrats.
But, you know, one of the points that Byron makes is the Giuliani analogy that people point to doesn't hold water, because Giuliani was ahead. He was ahead for a while, but he was never polling ahead in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina.
That's right.
The way that Trump has been consistently.
Right.
And so do you see greater staying power in Trump's numbers than we've seen in the past?
I do. I think the question is whether when people begin to fall by the wayside, which hasn't really happened yet. A couple of people have dropped out, and it looks like there may be a few more soon. But it depends on where their support goes and whether somebody emerges as the leading alternative to him. Now, that could be Ben Carson, which would make sense in a way, because after all, another constant in this cycle so far on the Republican side has been the enchantment with outsiders, and I don't mean people who've been sort of outsiders within the system. I mean complete outsiders, which is what Trump is, and it's also what Ben Carson is.
You've got sort of the brash, bold businessman outsider, and then you've got the more gentlemanly doctor outsider in those two guys. And they are close in a lot of these polls, but Trump continues to lead in all but, I think there was an Investor Business Daily poll that put Carson at 1. Britt, great to see you.
Thanks, Megan.
Also breaking tonight, new signs today pointing to Vice President Joe Biden actually jumping into this race for the Democratic nomination. But with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton so far ahead in the polls, some are asking, could Biden jump in because he knows something about Hillary's legal troubles via the FBI that perhaps the rest of America does not? Joining me now, pollster and CEO of Luntz Global, Frank Luntz. Frank, good to see you. Is that possible? Would he possibly have knowledge of the FBI's investigation that might lead him to look at these poll numbers, in which he has more than double his numbers in most of them, and say, I know something you don't know?
He shouldn't. It's not the way it should work, but it is certainly possible in this White House. We've seen things that we would believe never could have happened. But you have to understand Joe Biden and who he is. This man has wanted to be president since 1985. He had a very strong relationship with his son, and it is pretty clear that his son said to him on his deathbed that he wanted him to run, and that the vice president has always thought of this as his mission and his purpose. He's never been focused on polls. He's not a traditional politician. He says what he means and means what he says. He wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yep.
And so it's not necessarily connected to what's happening to Hillary Clinton.
And now he has to make a declaration within the next few days if he wants to get on the Georgia ballot in the general election. So it's got to happen if he's going to tell us he's running. Today, listen to this. You tell me whether this sounds to you like a man who's getting ready to run for president. This is a soundbite talking about how closely he works with our current president. Listen.
I spend between, depending on the season, 4 to 7 hours a day, every single day with the president. I attend every meeting the president has at his request.
I practically am the oh, wait, no. But he said that, and then he went on to differentiate himself, it sounded, Frank, from Hillary Clinton, who in the CNN debate was asked, who's your number one enemy? And she listed Iran, and she listed the Republicans. And listen to what Biden said there.
I really respect the members up there, and I still have a lot of Republican friends. I don't think my chief enemy is the Republican Party. This is a matter of making things work.
You're the master of words.
Look, he's a gaffe-a-day, and he will be entertainment fodder for every late-night show. But don't forget that one of the reasons why, in your conversation with Britt earlier, that Donald Trump is doing so well, it's that he's authentic. We may disagree with him, we may challenge him, but we believe that he believes what he's saying, and it's the same thing with Vice President Biden. It's refreshing to hear him communicate that way. When you look at Secretary Clinton and what she says and how she says it, it is so fabricated that you could almost read the teleprompter in her eyes. With Joe Biden, whatever comes out, you live with it.
Can you imagine if it's Trump v. Biden? Oh, what a fun race that would be to cover. All right, Frank, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we also have breaking news tonight from Israel with an entire series of new terror attacks. And our first look at some deeply disturbing new videos showing crowds celebrating the stabbings of Israelis and small children, including this little girl. Look at this. She's 3, being encouraged to pick up knives and join the fight by stabbing a Jew. Both sides up next in a fierce debate over this. Plus, the mayor of Los Angeles literally forced to run for safety after Black Lives protesters chased him from a public event, and we'll show you why. And then big news breaking tonight in the legal battle over free speech, with the estate of American sniper Chris Kyle under new attack from former wrestler turned governor Jesse Ventura.
After they did poor mouthing 3 or 4 times, talking about how this was having such an effect on the Kyle family, when the reality was it was not. It had effect on me. Do you realize this has cost me $1 million?